The world is filled with amazing people and even more miraculous saves that could very well have spelled lights out for everyone involved. These near-death misses are quite harrowing to experience, and we have to say that if these 5 moments were not filmed, no one would believe them. They're quite spectacular to say the least, although some are a little hard to watch at times, fair warning. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Driving fail launches car into air. This footage is absolutely nuts and shows footage of a motorist who smashed headlong into a divider, catching it just so. As they make contact, they end up with their car launching itself into the air and spinning violently, causing a ton of destruction and sending pieces of debris flying everywhere. It's amazing that nobody was seriously hurt, and they must have been absolutely flying in order to smash the divider with that much force. The crash can be seen from multiple angles, with a number of security cams clearly capturing the wild footage. This just goes to show that you should always pay attention to where you're going, and we assume that the driver must have been either seriously distracted or absolutely wasted to manage to pull off a stunt like this. Astoundingly, they end up just getting out of their car after the dust settles, standing there to inspect the damage like they did nothing wrong at all, and their accident was due to the barrier shifting suddenly. Yeah, likely story, bud. Number 4. JetBlue pilot sticks miracle landing. When a JetBlue pilot realized that his landing gear wasn't retracting soon after takeoff, they immediately radioed the tower to let them know that something was terribly wrong. Pilots assumed that something was wrong but weren't able to make any visual confirmation because they couldn't actually see what was going on. Rather than try their luck with a plane full of passengers, they were told to maintain a holding pattern to see if they could fix the problem. Before that, however, they had to figure out exactly what the problem was. The tower instructed the pilots to fly past operators so they could peer through the window and try to find out why the landing gear was stuck in place, which is pretty amazing in itself. What they saw terrified them all as they realized it was no small problem. It seems that the landing gear had become stuck, with the wheels twisted at a 90-degree angle, refusing to budge. This meant that any landing that the pilots attempted would involve touching down on a set of front wheels that were turned completely sideways, ensuring that any landing would be incredibly tricky. If we were that pilot, we would have been scared to death, sure that any attempted landing would end up in a fiery crash that seemed almost impossible to avoid. After making this visual confirmation, the tower then got back in touch with the pilot, thanking him for remaining calm, telling him to wait on out while they devised a plan that would allow the plane to land safely. We can't imagine how scared the passengers must have been. They were informed that they were being held there after a mechanical malfunction, and then proceeded to spend the next 3 hours in full limbo, not sure exactly what was going on or if they were going to make it out of the plane alive. After a few hours of the plane flying around in circles, no legitimate plan was put in place, as nobody was able to figure out how to get the landing gear unstuck and back in its proper position. Luckily, the back 2 set of wheels were aligned properly, so the tower instructed the pilots, who were worried about running low on fuel, to go ahead and attempt a landing anyway. They told them to burn as much of the remaining fuel as possible in order to lighten the plane and make it easier to maneuver once it hit the runway once again. They cleared the runway and prepared as many emergency vehicles as they needed, tossing a few more in for good measure, just in case. The passengers then sat back and prepared for an emergency landing, as their pilot mentally prepared himself to land the plane with his front wheels still twisted at the same 90-degree angle. The landing was nothing short of miraculous. As the plane touched down, the front tires began smoking violently before burning through their rubber. At this point, sparks began to shoot out from behind the wheels, but the pilot was, amazingly, able to keep the entire plane pointed in the right direction, eventually coming to a complete stop. Relieved passengers later said that they must have had the best pilot ever, as the landing was barely an issue and was about as smooth as any they had experienced before. The footage is wild, and we can't believe that nobody was seriously injured, which could have easily happened given the circumstances. Number 3. Train almost hits car. No matter how much of a rush you're in, there's no reason to try to blow through a railroad crossing, especially when the barrier's been lowered, signaling the train's imminent approach. One motorist apparently missed that memo, deciding they were more than capable of passing across the tracks before the train blew by. They realized too late, however, that they'd have to navigate past the lowered barrier or risk damaging both it and their car, slowing to a momentary stop to pull around. That delay almost cost them their life, as the train was busy barreling toward them at breakneck speed, much faster than the driver of the car had expected. The amazingly lucky driver can be seen pulling to the side and putting the pedal to the metal in a last-ditch attempt to clear the tracks before disaster struck. A car is built to protect its occupants from a lot of hits, but definitely not from a speeding train. And it's clear that if this driver hadn't gotten out of the way exactly when they did, then they would have been complete goners without a doubt. The massive train looks like it barely slowed down, which would have been difficult considering its speed and the amount of weight it was carrying, blasting past the car mere milliseconds after it passed over the tracks. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but holy crap was that a close call. Far too close for comfort, in our opinion. This terrifying video is proof that someone's got a guardian angel looking over their shoulder. We don't know what happened after this or if the driver was eventually charged with reckless driving, but we assume that they must have had the book thrown at them, assuming the authorities were able to track them down. One thing's for sure, and that's the fact that they'll never attempt to play chicken with a moving train ever again, because that close call would have given us enough of a scare that we'd never go anywhere near train tracks, regardless of whether or not a train's actually in the area. This panic-inducing moment should have been so much worse, and could easily even have meant death. Not just for the driver of the car, but for everyone in the train too. We can't say for sure if it would have derailed after hitting the car, but we think that outcome would have been likely, and the conductor must have had a stroke sounding their horn repeatedly and watching helplessly as it came closer and closer to what must have seemed like an unavoidable disaster. Number 2. Motorcyclist lands on car roof. A motorcyclist pulled off the stunt of the century after smashing headlong into the back of a car that changed lanes suddenly and without warning in front of him. He wasn't able to slow down in time or get out of the way before he makes contact, and the bike ends up completely totaled after smashing violently into the vehicle, getting tossed aside like a children's toy. The rider then begins to fly through the air, doing a full flip before landing, amazingly on his feet on the car's roof, looking stunned but very much okay. The car keeps going after he lands on top of it, planting his feet before sitting down immediately and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. We were initially skeptical that this was possible at all, but it seems that the video isn't doctored at all and that this wild and crazy stunt actually happened exactly as shown. While this isn't the expected outcome and the rider is extremely lucky, we bet that he's super proud of his spectacular feat, and we have to say that we're just happy that things didn't end up so much worse. It's a good thing that he managed to get out of his ordeal unscathed, potentially with minor scrapes and bruises, but we're sure that his bike ended up completely totaled, although it's better to happen that way around and not the other. Number 1. Skydiver survives 5,000-foot fall. Michael Holmes is the luckiest person on the planet, bar none. This video, which seems to have been taken by a helmet-mounted GoPro camera, shows him in what would have been a fall to the death for anyone else. It seems like he had a friend above him who was able to capture the scene from above with their own camera, and we would have hated to be the person up above, watching their friend plummet to the ground below. Holmes was traveling at around 70 miles per hour when he pulled his main parachute, expecting it to deploy as it always did. He must not have packed it properly, or something must have caught when it deployed as it didn't fully open. He pulled the cord at 4,000 feet above the ground and ended up completely helpless as the chute only deployed halfway, leading to Holmes being caught in what he must have assumed was a death spiral that he had no way of getting out of. Mike decided at this point to try to pull the cutaway cable, which was supposed to release the main chute and allow him to deploy his backup, but that malfunctioned as well, with the chute remaining firmly attached to his pack, refusing to release. This basically left him helpless. At 2,000 feet, he considered whether or not to deploy his backup chute in a final attempt to slow his descent. The problem with that would be if the secondary parachute got tangled up with the first, it could end up completely collapsing it, killing the small amount of lift that he did have at that point. With a final prayer, he pulled the cord with only seconds left before he hit the ground. He didn't have much time to think as he was dropping rapidly, and this move was basically a Hail Mary. Spinning violently, the backup chute got caught in the main one, and he knew he was gonna die. He waved a final goodbye to his friend who was watching helplessly from above and got ready to face his death. You can even hear him yelling, "Goodbye," which is hard to listen to. The camera shows him hitting the ground with a sickening thud. His friend landed not long afterward and, to his amazement, found his friend seriously injured but still alive. The two have a little chat, and after making sure his buddy was okay, his friend released himself from his own chute and helped his lucky friend to the hospital. We can't believe he managed to survive the ordeal, but are very happy he did, as that would have been a truly terrifying way to go. Alright, Top 5ers, we have something very exciting for you to see. Make sure to visit our other channel, The Brilliant. If you like what we have on Top 5's Finest, then we know you will love what we have there too. But be warned, the videos over on The Brilliant are extremely addicting to watch as well. There will be a link in the description to The Brilliant channel, so make sure to visit us now. Or you can go to our latest video popping up on screen right now. Come on, click it. You know you want to. Oh, and while you're here, subscribe also. Heard it gives you superpowers. Anyway, see you soon.